Picture this. You have just bought 160 acres. The sun is coming up over a red barn, and a tractor is parked beside a field that seems to run to the horizon. You can practically hear the inspirational music. Then your phone buzzes. The bank payment is due. Diesel is up. A hydraulic hose has burst. Rain is forecast for the exact week you need dry weather. And the crop you spent 6 months growing is now worth less than when you planted it. Welcome to the economics of owning a farm, where you can be a millionaire on paper and broke at the parts counter. So here is the big question. Is owning a farm a path to wealth or an extremely scenic way to go bankrupt? The answer is both. The difference comes down to understanding that a farm is not one business. It is 3 businesses stacked together: a real estate investment, an operating company, and a household trying to live on whatever is left. Mix those together, and the numbers become emotional. Separate them, and the economics begin to make sense. That stakes question reversal structure also makes a complicated subject easier to follow. In 2025, the United States had an estimated 1.865 million farms, averaging 469 acres. But that average hides a strange reality. 48% had less than $10,000 in annual sales, and nearly 79% had less than $100,000. Only about 10% had sales of $500,000 or more. The word farm includes everything from a part-time operation, selling a few calves, to a company moving millions of dollars of crops and livestock. The concentration becomes clearer when you look at production. Small family farms make up about 86% of all farms, but produce only 17% of the nation's agricultural output. Large-scale family farms are about 5% of farms, yet generate half of total production value. That does not make small farms pointless. It means commodity agriculture rewards scale. A grain buyer does not pay extra because your combine is adorable or you personally encouraged every soybean. When the product is standardized, low-cost production matters enormously. Now consider the first business inside the farm: the land. In 2025, average U.S. farm real estate, including land and buildings, was valued at $4,350 per acre. Cropland averaged $5,830, while pasture averaged $1,920. Location changes everything. Soil, water, drainage, access, development pressure, and local competition can move values dramatically. So national averages explain the math, but do not price a specific property. Let's buy our imaginary 160-acre farm at the national farm real estate average. That is $696,000. Put 20% down, and you need $139,200 in cash before buying seed, equipment, livestock, fencing, or fuel. The loan is $556,800. Agricultural lenders in the Chicago Federal Reserve District reported an average farm real estate loan rate of 6.74% in the first quarter of 2026. If our example loan were amortized over 25 years at that rate, annual payments would be roughly $46,700. Actual terms vary. This is an illustration. Here comes the first head fake. Suppose you do not farm the property. You rent it out and become the relaxed landowner collecting checks by the mailbox. The 2025 national average cropland rent was $161 per acre. Across 160 acres, that is $25,760 a year. Your illustrative loan payment is about $46,700. Before property taxes, insurance, repairs, or vacancies, you are already short by roughly $21,000. The land may appreciate, but the cash flow is negative. Buying farmland with heavy debt can feel less like purchasing an income asset and more like making monthly contributions to a very large, muddy retirement account. The simple rent-to-price yield in that example is about 3.7% before expenses. The Federal Reserve says farmland prices and price-to-rent ratios reached historically high levels in 2025, supported partly by limited supply despite elevated rates and operating costs. For an established farmer, buying the neighboring field may make sense because it fits existing equipment, labor, and storage. For a new investor expecting effortless passive income, the same deal can be brutal, but perhaps you plan to operate the farm. Now we enter business number 2, the biological factory. Every farm can be reduced to a basic equation. Revenue equals units produced multiplied by selling price. For crops, that might be acres times yield per acre times price per bushel. For cattle, animals sold times sale weight times price per pound. It sounds clean until you realize the farmer controls none of those variables completely. Yield depends on weather, pests, disease, soil, and management. Price may be set by a global market reacting to events thousands of miles away. Then come the expenses: seed, fertilizer, feed, chemicals, veterinary care, fuel, electricity, labor, land rent, insurance, repairs, interest, taxes, and machinery replacement. USDA forecasts $477.7 billion in farm sector production expenses for 2026. Cash receipts from crops and livestock are forecast at $514.7 billion. Those totals are not a farm-level profit calculation and other income matters, but they reveal the tension. Agriculture moves a gigantic river of money to produce a much smaller stream of profit. A modest shift in prices or costs can erase the margin quickly. This is why beginners confuse gross revenue with income. A farmer can sell $500,000 of grain and still have a terrible year. The bank account may briefly look magnificent after harvest, but much of that money already belongs to the seed dealer, fertilizer supplier, landlord, equipment lender, fuel company, and tax authority. Revenue is applause. Margin is what gets to go home with you. Equipment strengthens the illusion. A tractor, combine, truck, irrigation system, or livestock facility can increase output, but every machine creates four costs: purchase price, interest, maintenance, and depreciation. A paid-off machine is not free because eventually it must be replaced. USDA warns that net cash farm income is not a complete measure of profitability because it does not fully account for capital consumption, inventory changes, receivables, and payables. Cash flow tells you whether you survive this year. Economic profit tells you whether the business is consuming its future. Timing creates another problem. Farms often spend for months before receiving most of their revenue. That gap is covered by working capital or operating loans. In the Chicago Fed's first quarter 2026 survey, average operating loan rates were 7.08%. Loan demand remained strong. Repayment rates were lower than a year earlier, and renewals and extensions were higher. The crop is growing, but so is the interest bill. At this point, you might assume the national income numbers prove farming is highly profitable. USDA forecasts $153.4 billion in net farm income for 2026, above the inflation-adjusted average of the previous 20 years. But aggregate income is like the total score of every basketball game in America. Impressive, yet not useful for predicting your Tuesday night rec team. Farm income is distributed unevenly across regions, commodities, and sizes. Here is the most surprising number in the story. USDA forecasts median farm income earned by farm households at negative $1,161 in 2026, while median off-farm income is forecast at $92,815. That does not mean every farmer loses money. It means the middle farm household, including tiny residence farms and part-time operations, earns most of its living elsewhere. A job at a hospital, school, factory, construction company, or remote office often provides health insurance and financial stability, while the farm builds assets or struggles towards scale. Commercial farms tell a different story. In 2024, households operating commercial family farms had median farm income of $174,933, and 84% reported positive farm income. USDA forecasts average net cash farm income of $135,000 for farm businesses in 2026. Farming can generate a strong living. It simply does not do so evenly, automatically, or usually at hobby scale. Now we reach business number 3, the household. This is where technically profitable farms can still fail. The operation may service debt and replace machinery, but not support 2 families, college tuition, healthcare, and a new pickup every 3 years. A farm can also look unprofitable because it pays family members or provides housing. The household and business constantly pass money back and forth, so good records must separate owner withdrawals, unpaid family labor, land rent, and operating profit. Government programs sit inside the economics, but not in the cartoonish way people sometimes imagine. USDA forecasts $44.3 billion in direct government farm payments for 2026, driven largely by commodity programs and disaster assistance. That excludes crop insurance indemnities and USDA loans. These programs can stabilize income after low prices or disasters, but they do not turn a badly designed operation into a good one. They are guardrails on a mountain road. Guardrails can save you after a storm. They cannot make the engine profitable. So, where is the wealth? Mostly under the farmer's boots. USDA forecasts total farm sector assets of $4.54 trillion in 2026, with real estate representing about 83%. Sector debt is forecast at $624.7 billion. American agriculture is wealthy in aggregate, but much of that wealth is illiquid. A farmer may own land worth several $1,000,000 and still need an operating loan to plant. Selling land creates cash, but can shrink the productive base and break apart something the family hoped to pass down. This creates the central paradox. The operating business may earn a modest return, while the land quietly appreciates and creates long-term wealth. But appreciation does not pay this month's diesel bill unless you borrow against it or sell. When land prices rise faster than farm earnings, established owners get richer, and aspiring farmers face a higher entrance fee. The trend that rewards yesterday's buyer punishes tomorrow's beginner. So how do successful owners improve the odds? First, they often separate owning land from farming land. A new operator may rent acres before buying them, preserving cash for inputs, livestock, marketing, and working capital. Renting does not build land equity, but it can keep the farm from suffocating under mortgage payments before the operating business is proven. Second, they match machinery to actual use. Owning every machine feels independent, but a lightly used machine can become a monument to pride with a payment schedule. Leasing, sharing, hiring custom operators, or buying used can convert fixed costs into variable costs. The right question is not, would this tractor be useful? Almost every tractor is useful. The question is, will the extra profit exceed its full annual cost? Third, they choose a model that fits their scale. Commodity crops and conventional livestock usually demand efficiency and volume. Smaller farms may pursue higher revenue per acre through vegetables, nursery products, direct meat sales, subscriptions, farm stands, or agritourism. But higher revenue per acre usually brings more labor, marketing, customer service, and local demand risk. There is no magical crop that turns 10 acres into a fortune while the owner relaxes in a hammock. The constraint simply moves from land to labor or management. Fourth, they build margins of safety, conservative debt, cash reserves, insurance, off-farm income, diversified enterprises, marketing contracts, or enough working capital to survive 2 bad years. The farm with the highest return in a perfect year is not always the farm that survives a terrible one. Fifth, they measure the return on everything, including themselves. What did the land earn? What did the operating business earn after paying fair rent? What did the owner earn for labor and management? If the farm shows a $70,000 profit, but 2 people worked full-time without wages, and $3 million of land was used for free, the business may be producing a poor economic return even though the checking account is positive. Imagine 3 farmers. Farmer 1 buys 160 acres with a large mortgage, purchases a full line of equipment, and grows a commodity crop. The farm is beautiful, and cash flow is tight from day one. Farmer 2 rents 500 acres, owns only frequently used equipment, hires the rest, and keeps an off-farm job early on. Farmer 2 owns less, but controls more productive capacity with less fixed debt. Farmer 3 grows specialty crops on 10 acres near a wealthy city and grosses far more per acre, but spends weekends packing boxes, managing employees, and persuading customers that a misshapen tomato is heirloom. None is automatically best. Each converts land, capital, labor, and risk into income differently. Before buying a farm, ask 4 questions. Who is the customer, and why will they buy? What is the expected margin after paying for land, labor, depreciation, and management at realistic rates? How does the business survive a bad price, bad yield, sick herd, or family emergency? And are you buying a job, an investment, a lifestyle, or a legacy? A farm can provide all 4, but rarely maximizes all 4 at once. So is owning a farm a good investment? It can be. Farmland can preserve wealth, appreciate, generate rent, and support a profitable business. It can also lock enormous capital into a low-yield asset, expose the owner to weather and commodity cycles, demand relentless labor, and create enough debt that one bad season becomes a family crisis. Farms do not make money merely because they are farms. They make money when productive assets are bought or rented at sensible prices, financed conservatively, operated efficiently, and connected to a market that pays more than the full cost of production. The barn, sunrise, and family tradition may explain why someone starts. Margin, cash flow, and the balance sheet determine whether they continue. And that may be the strangest economics of all. The most valuable crop is not corn, cattle, almonds. It is optionality. Enough equity to endure, enough cash to wait, enough skill to change, and enough humility to admit when the original plan is not working. The farmer who survives is not always the one with the biggest harvest. It is the one who can still afford to plant again next year. If you found this video valuable, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below which business you want me to cover next.